Thank you, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in this beautiful day. I thought it was going to be empty. I was worried. So thank you so much. Thank you, Blue Sky and Sea, for all of the work and for the opportunity. I really love to be here, and I'm really, really loving Portland. My name is Cristina Velásquez again. I am a Colombian artist, but I've been living in the U.S., between Colombia and the U.S. for the past 15 years. I am currently based in Austin. However, I continue shooting and making most of my work in Colombia or Latin America. And I mention this because it's this moving between these two geographies, these two different languages, and these two different worlds, something that has strongly shaped my practice, the way I make sense of the world and the way I approach art making. In this show, you can see work from the past 10 years. There's work that is very, very old, like that piece, for example, or this piece. Those are from 2018. But also you can see work that is very new, that I printed just for this show. And everything is very, very mixed. And in part, that's the case because the mix is very central in what this work is about. By mixing and weaving, I create new space. I create a new language that sustains my practice. And I actually wrote for the statement this thing where I said that my work can be seen as a continuous reelaboration of languages that embody rupture and mend. They are hybrid, migratory, mestizo. And you can understand my work as a constellation of fragments that are woven together, that originate from and end up in the human body, in the human experience, as a space of inscription and resistance. Okay, I'm starting with that, but today I want to share with you some of the motivations and rationale behind my work. Please make questions, interrupt me. I would love if this can become a conversation at some point. However, I wrote some notes because my first language is not Spanish and I end up getting crazy. So I'm gonna have this text to guide me. For some moments I'm gonna read, I hope you don't mind, but please interrupt me at any point. Okay, I think to start, there are two main spinal cords that hold or start the conversations in my work. The first one is the medium of photography in itself, as a fine art form in its own right, the way it relates to other mediums, and my growing interest in learning from it, contributing to it, and positioning myself inside of the canon. The second one is my identity as a Colombian woman artist and mother, and my experience as a foreign in the US for the past 15 years. For me, photography is this space where I can connect past, present, and future actively. Is this space where I can pay attention to how the world looks like, but also why does it look the way it looks. It's this place where I can ask complicated questions about truth, belief, where I can seek for understanding, but for me, most importantly, where I can respond and find reparation. In my photographs, and this is something that we've been discussing these days, it's not important for me to distinguish whether an image was set up or whether an image was just there, was found. I believe my work actually thrives in this space, fluxing between the political and the fantastic, where that line blurs. And just as a note, I come from a very traditional education in photography. So I did my MFA, as you heard, in BARD, ICP BARD. And even though we had the brilliant Justin Kurland and Nayland Blake to liberate us, we had this traditional New York, the New York photo tradition was very heavy to escape. I remember its heavy influence from the street photographers, war photographers, editorial photographers, these male wide figures from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that were very predominant, amazing photographers that influenced me, taught me everything, but at a point, it was hard for me to relate on a personal level to what I was learning. I remember that I started to feel at a point that it was problematic because even though I respected those figures, I couldn't relate on a personal level. I am Colombian, as I mentioned, so we've been tormented by war and violence forever. So when I got here to study photography, I was completely tired of the kind of photograph that only is there to prove or as evidence, to document what already exists. I was not very interested in the editorial. I was not interested in photographing special people. I didn't remember feeling very special. Nothing of that was for me. Also, as a Latin American woman, I never had access to public space in the way those photographers had. Street photography was never an option for us. And let's not even go to the idea of the photographic studio. Having a photographic studio in Latin America is like unimaginable. Like, what? No. So, but anyway, I wanted to treat photography as a fine art form. I wanted to be able to imagine. I wanted it as an expressive form. I wanted the poetics of it. I wanted to be the narrator. I needed space for possibility and for desire in my work. And that was something that I was also not finding in the photography that was coming from my region. And on the other side, I also wanted to honor people like me and the singularity of life. I wanted to just be able to explore the interconnected relationships that emerge and manifest in the visual world. And for all those reasons, I started to find my own place and deepening my understanding of what a photograph is, what a photograph can do, and what kind of art I really wanted to make. As a consequence of all of this, the theory practice of my work is very photographic, but you will see that it's also very infused in Latin American history, social politics, labor history, feminisms, particularly from the South, and family. I often, and you'll see also that even though photography is my main medium, weaving is a secondary medium that changes everything in my work. Unfortunately, in this show, there are no pieces that are explicitly woven on the outside. But you will find in every piece here, inside of the composition, and sometimes in how I show, that weaving is central and is structural in what I do. I introduce weaving and fabric inside and outside my compositions to shape an experimental counterpoint that aims to challenge and expand what I know of Latin American photography. One thing that is important for me to add here maybe is that even though I love photography, I was also able at a point to recognize its limitations. And one of the reasons why I started to introduce weaving was because I was able to see photography's failure to adequately express or translate the material reality to which it's making reference to. Historically, in Latin America, what we call photography is not only photographs or images made by light. We have always had photographs that are the result of mixing media, combination of media. And hybrid pictures in Latin America predate contemporary meditations about intermediate practices, and they have always questioned the indexical nature of photography. Rather than suggesting an existential connection from the subject to its representation, these images actually offer something that for me was amazing, and it's this need to redefine what a photograph can be. It's like the photography's meaning, the photograph's meaning. I don't know if I'm being clear. So in my work and in the work of many other Latin American artists, and I think that's important, we suggest in a way that the photograph is somehow flawed or incomplete. And that is something that I resisted at the beginning with that idea, but that is important. I kind of say that it needs a supplement to achieve the desired meaning. And that puts me in, doesn't put me far from what I'm trying to say is that it puts us far from the idea of taking pictures. It allows us to get more aligned with this idea of creating them, of making pictures, which, yeah. So incorporating weaving, as I'm saying, allows me to bring the attention back to the material, into the physical body. I cut, dissect, and subvert compositions in an attempt to reposition my active role within a narrative. Each new composition is a reclamation of space, a reclamation of history, and actually I'm just seeing these two on my sides, and they both do that in different ways. And each new composition and this way of working actually, and this parenthesis, is very inspired in my mom and my two grandmothers, who use weaving, crocheting, quilting, and sewing as ways, not only as survival ways, but also as forms of liberation and creative expression. Weaving physically and conceptually also allows me to do things that are important for me, which are moving back and forth in time, transiting between reality and fiction, transiting between photographic genres, and occasionally even exploring different mediums like literature or collage, like here. And as you would see, I insist on considering the perceptual rather than the only exclusive visual dimension of the photographic experience. With time, I hope, is this being boring maybe because I'm reading a bit? Okay, and stop me or make questions or at any point. Okay, with time I have started to think that everything in my work is related to language. And by exploring photography, I'm also exploring the possibilities and limitations of language and translation themselves. I'm interested in the way one culture translates another, and how inevitably the dominant culture sanitizes the other in a continuity of colonialism, because at the end, translation is transactional. Weaving then could be seen as my native language, raw and educated, female, and photography on the other side can be seen as the foreign language that for years I have been trying to learn from, to appropriate, modern, educated, masculine, for sure. And as I get older, these two languages have started to come together in ways that are more interesting and more equal, and I'm allowing them to disturb each other more freely. This takes me, of course, to this second side of my work, which is my identity. I've been touching that, of course, but not only my identity, but my experience of coming to the US, leaving home, coming here to study, make a living, raise a child. Those experiences shifted completely my experience as a photographer. They gave me the opportunity to recognize my privilege. They gave me the opportunity to develop my curiosity for my own culture while questioning its oppressive, patriarchal, and Eurocentric tendencies which dominated my education. And they also gave me the opportunity to start confronting a colonial narrative that is very predominant in my present and my past, with the hope of creating an alternative one for the future. So my engagement with photography, and I hope you see that in the work that is here, is an ongoing exercise in recentering. Drawing from my experience as a Latin American woman, artist, and mother, through my work I intend to challenge and expand the logic of a canon that has long been complicit in excluding alternative narratives, aesthetics, and perspectives from being heard. And I really reclaim history and identity to resist erasure and to resist cultural assimilation. I also, on the second side, I'm gonna say this and stop. I reclaim photography as for us, for Latin Americans, photography was also always like a means for oppression. I reclaim it as a medium for connection, for reparation, and for critical thinking, and for expression. Sorry, yeah, that's it.
When did you first start? And also, do you bring like a whole crew with you for these moments?
No, crew. Look, that's my crew. And then, no, and they don't even go with me. No. So I started this. So I did my MFA in 2015. I've been doing this for a while. So I'll talk about this in a minute, actually, because the photographic studio is a thing that is very present also. So what I do is that I change the direction of how it works. I don't bring people to a studio, because that is very opposite from what I'm saying, actually. I understand that idea of bringing people to a studio like bringing people to the center with the knowledge, where the knowledge occurs. What I try to do is the opposite. I try to go to the centers, to the many centers that are there around me that no one is paying attention to. So I bring cameras and studio things with me, and I create like temporary studios around things that are happening or around people. Yeah. Did I answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. Usually, so you go to the communities in Colombia and you interact with them and take the photograph in the context and create this
Yes.
storytelling.
Yes.
Okay.
But I don't really go to different communities or this is my community. So everyone you see around here is a close friend or family.
Okay.
So that's why probably I'm able to do it in such an intimate way. I have, the only places where I'm really able to make work that I believe it's important are those places where I feel like home. It doesn't need to be, of course, always the same place in Colombia. For example, I used to live in Ithaca, New York for a while, and I was making pictures there. I was feeling home. I was understanding what I was doing. I was not a foreign anymore. Because I always put this example like, I think that to be able to compose, you have to know the notes. And when you're new to a place, you basically don't get the small details of what's happening. So yeah.
So you were just describing that as a sort of a practical thing, that you're photographing people you know because that way you pick up all the details and everything. But it seems like it's also more central to kind of the meaning of the work. That and it's not just for convenience, it's that it becomes
Absolutely.
an important part of what you're doing. And
Yes.
that you haven't maybe talked about that aspect.
Yes, because at the end, I think this has been, as a Latin American person learning photography, the first question that you're crossed, how do you say that, like atravesado by, is identity. Like this thing that, and it's been a problem for me because it changes, it shifts all the time. But yeah, this idea of identity, this idea of who we are, that we don't really ask that question when we are there. Because identity is this relational thing that only becomes a thing when you are in front of a person that is different, I guess, if that is something. So when I got to the US, suddenly everyone was asking me questions about being brown, a million tags that were put to me. And my identity started to become a thing. And that's why I went back and I started to make questions that I never asked before. So yes, people in my work is key. For me, the human experience is the center of everything, as is very clear in this show. And identity is this question that I'm always exploring from different sides. For example, right now I'm feeling like identity is como una trampa. How do you say that? Like a trick, tramp? No, I don't know. And I'm trying actually, a trap? Okay, yeah, so I'm trying actually to move away from those things that were put to us like in this way that was so complicated, but also never forgetting all of this that makes me. And actually, to be more explicit to what you were saying, what I'm saying here in this exhibition is that what I am, and I said it at some point, self is not in oneself. Like this idea of who I am is not necessarily in my face, as in most of the portraits they try to make us think is in our face. Self is not in oneself. It starts in the human body, in the body experience for sure, but it is scattered around through space. It has everything to do with territory. It is intertwined with objects and other people. It's expanded in territory and memory. That for me is more definitory of what I am as a subject, como subjetividad, than those ideas of identity that I have been sold into that don't really make much sense for me. And also, and I'm gonna end with that, and maybe we can have a conversation, no? I don't know if this, okay. For this reason also, in my work, the notion of identity is displaced. It is no longer a fixed face. I like to think of it as a captured accident that in the next moment can be different. So this idea of identity is always dependent on this constant flux. And that is important, and that touches why you cannot see faces also. That starts to talk about that in a little bit. identity is obscured, not only because I want to protect the people that lend me their presence, but also because I don't think that identity is there. I think that in order to know who someone is, you have to dig deeper, kind of. Okay, okay, I'm gonna get going a bit then. But now I want to bring things from what we said. Okay, so one thing that is also important is that I believe that, let me see, our freedom, I believe that our freedom resides in our capacity to reveal or conceal fragments of ourselves in acts of self-narration, where fiction is essential. Self-narration in photography is a relatively new thing for Latin American people. I don't think that we have been able to really liberate ourselves in the visual. We have been, the only space that for me has been really free for Latin America is storytelling. That's why literature is so essential for us. And in part because, and I'm going to connect with that in a minute, but that happens in part because we learned about who we were through the impressions of others in their term. And it's been a process to revisit our past, and it's really, I think it's very hard for us to envision our futures. So visibility, wanting to conceal, but also wanting to be very present, how we are seen by others, how we present to others is essential in the work that I do. And what remains, what I can call the identity in my work, is a certain tropical light and this structure of the weaving in itself. So I guess I'm gonna close. I wanted to add something that I took notes here. And no, whatever, I'm gonna leave it there. So yes, through photography and weaving, wait, I'm gonna close, and then we can talk. So I think that through photography and weaving, I learn about translation, I learn about relationships, I learn about who I am, and I learn about the relationships between cultures and resistance as well, both as mechanisms for oppression and silencing, but also as a powerful tool for connection and reparation. My work speaks to the complexities of negotiating overlapping imageries, the global circulation of popular culture, and the process by which objects, images, and people carry meaning. And one last thing is that my work is, I think, a tribute to the Latin American people, I guess, to the everyday struggles of working class families that resist and find joy in the midst of informality, precariousness, but also invisibility. And their imprint forever will be infused in my artwork with a sense of dignity, absurdity, and joyous color. So, yeah.
Great.
Are there more questions? I think I saw a few more hands. Don't be shy.
I have a question. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the content in the pictures. And I'm looking at this whole sequence here and wondering if there's a narrative element, there are some connections, if you can just talk about some of the meaning and maybe the content in the images.
Of course. There's not a narrative element here. I actually move away from. I don't think that photography is good for that. I don't think that photography is good for telling stories, even though that's something that we have always heard. I think that photography is really good at describing, at details, at poetry. So that is what I offer. I offer fragments for speculation in each of these pieces, where the narrative is always multiple. So the idea is that the narrative, as Barbara was saying, the narrative is contributed by the reader. And that is something that for me is essential. And that, in a way, is my way to honor the Latin American literature, which has been like the freest and most beautiful place for us. So yeah, so that's to start. So each of the pieces, I could talk about content if you want, but one or of the ones that you would like. The only thing that I would like to say here is that here I am particularly thinking about memory and this idea of memory and the archive. And I started actually that statement saying that my memory is an archive that is full of gaps, that is incomplete, that is made, I don't know what I wrote. I wish I'm gonna read it because that helps me. But yeah, an incomplete archive full of gaps, reconstructions, and possibilities, continuously rewritten. And my subjectivity is a weaving of what I remember, what I have forgotten, what I have been imposed, what has been imposed on me, and what I have chosen to be. So in here, that's why I'm trying to keep this a line that is very connected, because I think that that is more close to what I can envision of my memory and the images of who I am. It would be something more like this than pieces separated from the others.
Thank you for your talk and your photos. Amazing.
Thank you.
I only wish we had some of the reading.
Yes.
Here. So I had basically two questions. I think in terms of your eye and the eyes of to see the work, and I'm thinking of Alberto Córdoba and the share photo. So what do you think needs to happen so your work is not appropriated and objectified in the same way? So that's one question I have. And then the other question I have is obviously you're nurtured and inspired and everything from Colombia and images, and also interested in that, in the interstices of language and cultures and all of that. Mm-hmm. So my second question is, so how do you keep that alive and how do you give back? So for example, maybe, I don't know, you have give cameras to children in Bogota or whatever. So just the two questions.
I love what you asked. But now I forgot the first question. I'm going to start with the second one. Yes.
Images that is being used for underwear or whatever.
Yeah. That is, I think that is very outside from the control of the artist. That is very hard. It's something that I have never thought about actually, because I feel like the people that are really interested in my work are so few, like that's not gonna happen. But that's something that could happen, I guess. But I think a list of problems before that are like huge that I have to. So yeah, I don't know how to deal with that. Yeah, that is very hard to answer. And it's not something that preoccupies me that much, because I have some other things that are more important. And how I contribute to my communities, let's say. So that makes me think of something. Like, I think that the fact that I'm talking about us is important for, not just for me, it's important for us in general. I don't feel that I'm taking from them when I make these pictures. So I don't feel the need of a transaction that I have to give back. Because I don't want to maybe put myself in that thing that because I'm making the picture, then I have to give back. I don't think that everything should be transactional, and that brings me to this problematic thing. However, every picture that I make with a friend, a cousin, whatever, every picture I give to them. I give to them afterwards. And it's good because even though it's probably, this idea of the collaborative portrait is like a very weird thing to say, because it's never completely collaborative. Like, you really have the power of the camera. There's only one way of power that's happening there. But because I do it with my family, in my house, in our place, and we do it in this shared space of intimacy, it's amazing, because we talk while we're doing it. I make questions, they make questions, we kind of make it together. So it's a very generous space that is for, I don't know, yeah.
You mentioned like how does your photography connects to your memories.
Yes.
And also we like had a conversation on Thursday night about like what is like the almost like the original source of the picture coming from.
Yes.
But it's like, how do you go from like reminiscent of your past and which is like instead of recreating the exact thing you remembered, what's your thought process on subverting them, or how do you arrive at a more abstraction but still reflects of what you see, but
I think I understand what you're asking. So there is I don't have just one way of making photographs. For example, there's some photographs here that started on a memory of mine, or on a story that I heard, or on something that I saw on the street. So the spark started there. And from there, I start creating layers and I build something. But each photograph is like a completely different world, if I can say. But talking about that particular thing of the memory as the starter, this is one example of that. So so I have had these memories since I was a little child. I don't know if I should tell it, but it's a small thing to give context to the rest. In Colombia, it was very common when I was a child to have like pigs killed in celebrations. So it would be this event where the pig was killed, everyone would be around, we would all watch the pig die, the noise was awful, there was blood everywhere, and it's very normalized, like but I remember that for me that was always hell, that was the worst. And I remember that I would hide and I would shower when the pig arrived, so I would like open the water and not hear the noise. But then and that was hell. And then the second thing that I remember like very vividly is this idea, this thing that the guys that would kill the pig, that normally is an old guy, and the grandson, they would put on like plastic bags so they don't get so stained by the blood. And I remember one day trying to write this memory, I wrote that for a moment to be able to kill so coldly, like the life of another living being, you have to become trash. So you have to become trash to be able to do that, and then you take off that and you continue your life. It was kind of that, what I wrote, and it exists as a fragment, as a piece of text. And from there, so one day, so I had this, and I also was working with a friend, and I had this plastic, and this memory came to mind, and everything starts to mix together, and then I created this in a way because I had that memory very present, and it was important for me, and I wanted to transform it into something else. And also as a way to honor these guys from my country that don't really have options, like the grandson of the butcher. Like, he has to be the new butcher because he doesn't have anything to do. He hates it, but he has to do that because he doesn't really have any other opportunity. So these photographs, that was the way it happened with this one. But each one is very different. So sometimes I have a drawing, sometimes something happens in the street that I'm like, no, that's amazing. And I draw it and I keep it. Or sometimes I just see someone that for me is key, and we start working together and we build a photograph around this thing that emerges.
Are you in any of the photographs?
Yes.
And then also,
more and more every time.
really cool context from that one, because that one seems to feel like he's taking it off while it's clean or whatever. But are any of them about maybe like pollution? I'm just curious.
Excuse me? Can you?
Are any of the themes about pollution maybe? Just guessing.
Not necessarily, yeah, there's a lot of plastic, but it's also because that's our but like it's funny because in Latin America, everyone thinks about America and the south of America as this utopic, like very natural place. We are full of plastic because we are poor. So we need to, so everything moves between this tension of the artificial and the natural. So that tension is actually very important for me to understand the region. So yeah, there's a lot of plastic. But no, I would not say that pollution is a theme. Maybe it should be.
It's coming.
Yes.
This is kind of a selfish question. I'm just curious about what you've been reading recently.
Ooh.
Because I love hearing you speak. You are so articulate, and you're sort of gesturing to all these ideas that I'm recognizing, and I'm like, what has she been reading? I want to know what you've been thinking about.
That's cool. That's a cool question. I'm the worst because my memory is super bad. But I read a lot Latin American literature. That's what I love to read. There's a writer from Colombia that obsesses me recently. That is Carolina Sanín. She's brilliant. Carolina Sanín. But I also read a lot of nonfiction and photographic theory all the time. I like to read a lot of weaving theory as well. So I guess I would need to send you a list of things. But I love to read. That's my.
I'm gonna have to.
I love literature.
I'm gonna have to find you later and get you to give me more specifics.
Yes.
I'm like writing down.
Yeah, obviously the most famous Colombian person is Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yes.
And magic realism has changed literature.
Yes, and not only literature.
And I feel really interesting because you talked earlier in your talk, you were talking about that you weren't so interested in making a distinction between a documentary image and a created image, that you were interested in the sort of blurring of the two. And I think that's very much when you ascend to heaven with the laundry, that's what you're doing. You're making something that feels real that's obviously not.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a really kind of an interesting core thing. And what you were describing about this, of taking this sort of horrific memory and turning it into this beautiful angel image, I think it's really rich that way. Compare that to somebody like Joan Fontcuberta from Spain, whose his work is about saying, you shouldn't believe photography, it's all lies, and really trying to disrupt the belief that we have when we look at a photograph. Whereas I think you're sort of saying, okay, this is a truth, whether it's happened or not. This is true. And
I like that.
And working in your own community, if I come in as the outsider, all I can do is record what's there because I don't know a deeper truth, but you do.
Exactly, I agree. Yes, I think that photography has this ability of documenting, but it also has this space for imagining. So doing half of it for me is losing a lot of potential and it's boring. Also coming from a place like mine, where we have had such a violent past, we need to be able to imagine where do you want to get, our future. So if we don't do this in photography or on the visual arts or literature, where would we do it? So yes, I think that there's as much reality as fiction in all of these pieces.
Have your hand up. Yeah. There's a few people I know trying to put questions in. Yeah.
So I think when an artist makes a piece and it's out there, there's a couple ways to think about it. So I'm thinking about the one where you told the story. So it could be out there, we can look at it, we can get what we want to out of it, which is fine. That's actually sort of the way I operate when I make art. But you told a very interesting story, and I imagine there are stories with a lot of these from your presentation. Have you thought about putting a little card explaining why you were motivated to make that? Because then there's sort of two things going on. That's kind of interesting.
Actually, it's funny that I think that I love that memory, and I love that text, that fragment that I wrote. I think that's important. And I also love this piece, but for me, they're two different things. And I think that if I told you that because we were talking about context and memory, blah, 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 but I don't think this piece needs it at all. Like, I think that if I put that there, I would be killing your possibility of interpretation and reading and bringing.
It makes it very different if you do that.
Yeah, so I don't think it needs it. I think I actually like them to exist, both. And sometimes when people, if someone finds both, that would be very cool, but not in this context. I actually think that each of the pieces should be self-sustained and complete. I think that if a piece needs a story on the side of an explanation, is because it's not doing its job. So yeah.
I saw some over here and then you over here too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually two questions. One is, are there any women photographers that you admire or follow? And the second is, would you talk about your recent residency and that experience?
Yes, so,
It's reading your bio.
thank you. So, but you were female photographers that I admire in general?
Yeah, well,
Oosh.
talk about,
Many.
being in the world of men in New York.
Yes.
I'm curious what women.
Yeah. So Rinika Dijkstra was the first photographer that I was like, I love her. But Rinika Dijkstra, for me, that is completely crazy and the best. No, she's completely brilliant. And she was probably the first photographer that made me feel like this is the thing that I want to do. This is why was this photograph not made by me? Like this thing. But no, there's many. Like there's Justine Kurland. She's my mentor. She works with me sometimes. I really admire her. She's brilliant. Keisha Scarville. Many. I'm not going to remember now because my memory, but no, for actually the best photographers that I can think of right now are women. But there are also amazing men. Ana Mendieta, exactly, Ana Mendieta. No, muchas fantásticas. Marta Naranjo Sandoval. The thing that I'm doing now is that I'm trying to learn from people that are emerging, from people because there's people that are doing brilliant things. For too long, I was very influenced by the modern artists and the older photographers, let's say. But there's people that are less supported, but really brilliant right now making things. So I try to mix and learn from all.
And then the second question is, what does your impressions of your residency?
Which one?
I guess.
I haven't been.
You haven't been yet.
I know, I got it, but I pushed it so I'm gonna be there next year. I haven't been, but I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you approach your residency? What does it mean for you?
Okay, so it means for me space, mental space, and resources to make work. Unfortunately, it's very hard to be an artist. Like we were talking about that the other day. Like I work a lot, but 90% of my work doesn't translate to to money. And try to be a functional person and be a mother with that reality is very hard. So those residencies are essential. The thing is that once you become a mother, then residencies are not an option anymore. So I've been having to say no to the ones that I'm invited to because how? I have a kid that has to go to school. I have to make food. I have to live. And I think that the art world is not very, I don't know if it's not very aware that half of the people there need different conditions and support. Am I being too heavy? I'm sorry. Like too dense?
These themes related with nostalgia, identity, be a Colombian woman, songs, looks like they are related with Colombia, a place. How was that when you are in a context like Texas now? It's completely different. You work the same topics, but you change the approach, or you work with other teams. How was that?
No, I never changed the subject. Like, I've been working in this project, like, if we can call this a project, I've been working in these, like, my research project for the past 15 years. So it evolves piece by piece, piece by piece. I never change it because I don't do this because of how people are going to react or receive it. I don't think that that's something that we should be thinking about, because then I would be needing to have like 30 different strategies for this room. You know what I mean? What I think that the only thing that I do is I try to be very honest in work. This is the only work that I can do, that only me can do. So I try to be very atravesada by the time that I'm living in and the geography that I'm impacted by. So I make the most genuine work that I can do from that point. The rest, you cannot control. Like, yeah. You?
Hi, very nice talk. I really appreciate your
articulation
of the process. I'll ask a question that kind of connects to many people's comments and questions. And this is how I will say it. If I have to take 2 pictures from what you have and take it home with me, I'll take that one with the fruits and the knife, and the one with the hand and the rocks. Can you tell us how you came up? They are so very different. So what was the motivation capturing that? How did you frame those?
Okay. It's funny that you say that, because the fruit one is one of those pictures that I have never used. It's very old, and I never felt it was good enough. But I never felt it was bad enough to take it, like to ignore it. It was weird. But I was never able to use it until I got to this way of presenting, where I needed those to be able to sustain like this flow. That is a purely documentary photograph. I didn't touch the knife. I didn't do anything. But for me, the relationship between that fruit and that knife talks a lot about us in a way. So I felt that I didn't really need to do much. But if I put it in the correct conversation, it adds what I need. And the hand is, so he's a friend of mine from Viterbo, from the town where my grandmother lives. And he's a guy that lives selling things from one town to the other, and he takes notes in his hands, like with a small notepad. So I don't know if he writes fast or what, but he always, like his hand, it's always with lines of pen, like. And one day I was like, hey, show me your hand. And I was like, I need to make a picture of this. And it was very simple. So it was also a very small moment. But he is the same person as that guy, exactly. So it was when we were creating that portrait that we made this hand. And for me, it's amazing because these lines that are like the lines of his hand, that are very natural, his lines, the ones that were with him, have been always with him, connect with these lines that are very artificial, that are on top. All of them are like a map, like all of them showing things that I don't know, that you can only see on the body. It's like weird. So for me, this was amazing and connected with these lines in this map that is a map on a rock. That, anyway, yeah, I don't want to, but yeah, that's it. Of course, if you do this, it's completely different than if you do this. It's like asking, it's like elevating himself or like reaching towards something. So it also touches this like spiritual, I don't know, thing that I think is also kind of present for me. Thank you.
Did you have a question? I was going to ask, it's similar, but Heather, you said that these photographs have been taken over a series of over an amount of time.
Yeah.
And I wondered if your perspective has changed, especially given that you're not maybe in this community all the time now. Mm-hmm. And like maybe how has your perspective changed, or like maybe how has the community changed over the course of these years?
I don't know. Like, definitely my perspective changes like you are evolving. And I made that picture in 2018, and I made this one 2025. So there's things that have changed. But I don't know if I could tell you exactly what has changed of my vision towards my community, because it's actually funny to talk about Latin America as my community, because it's so big. I don't know. I think that here, what's important. So before I get to that, so what has changed is the way I make pictures. I think that, of course, there's new things that emerge all the time, and there's things that I used to do a lot that I don't do anymore. So that changes, and if you see the work in a more expansive way, if you see more work, it's very clear, and you're able to trace like how the work has changed. At a point at the beginning, I was making work that was a lot more documentary, like this one and that one. Now my hand on my commentary is very present in each of the photographs. Like now you know that that was not there. Like you could ask for a minute, like was that there? But you know that someone there was staged, or something there was, created by me. Before it was not so present, so that has changed.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Or wonderful questions, good.
Yes, thank you. My mom. Yes, my mom. Yeah, I think I started loving photography because of her. She wanted to be a photographer. She ended up not doing it. She ended up just using it as her passion, blah, blah. But when I was a kid, I used to have a darkroom in my house. And I think that started my love for photography. I also was very shy, and I think my mom was very smart in giving me a camera since I was very small, and that changed my way of relating myself with others. So yeah, my mom.
If you had it that young, do you think that's what helped develop that sense of memory with photographs?
Wait, I didn't hear the beginning. If what?
If you got the camera that young, do you think that might have what kickstarted your memories being associated with photographs? I'm just thinking.
I don't know.
I had a dark room in your house that you grew up in. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
That must have really kickstarted that whole idea.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that impacted the way I express things, especially the way I try to get through the things that I need, that I care for. I don't know. For example, this I could for me with the arts and with photography, I'm able to transform, and that is cool. I recently discovered in my practice this space for subverting things that I didn't like from my past, for example. That was something I was not doing before. I remember feeling the history of my people and the history of my personal life, like this heritage that you have to carry it as it is, and that's yours and that's it. And now I discovered that through photography, I'm able to actually activate my position in narratives that were herited. So I can really, really activate not only present and future, but past. So maybe having photography so present in my life always impacted the way I read things. I don't know. Now I am moving to many different places, but yeah, I don't know.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.